Hello, welcome to the podcast from Duendelvin. I'm Taylor, and in this podcast, we will be exploring the world of Savarion. Here we have Jeff and Kyle. Today we'll be discussing secret societies again.
Secret.
Are we just going right in? So, where did we leave off?
Oh man. So we were talking about the fall and the first big L that the Knights of the End of Days had, and the first super big W for the Shadows Guild.
And we looked it up. It's the Coalayan Empire.
Coalayan Empire. The fall of the Coalayan Empire.
Yep.
We borrowed a little bit of Lion King action, a little bit of Secession Wars, a little bit of other stuff to really flesh out the shenanigans. It's kind of cool too because we don't get to talk about it because they're dead empire, but they had teams of miners that would go into the ruins of Durzan and gather stuff up. And one of the fun things about that was Dwarven Society had the key cards like we talked about, and having no understanding of what these key cards are about, you had all these people finding all these key cards like laying around that are different colors, and they're just like, what the crap is this? So you just have like these archaeologist teams gathering these cards like trash and getting them out of the way because the populace of Durzan, drop the card and run.
Yeah.
Don't need it anymore. Or they, were trying to run from the Horakai and got dead. But yeah,
So,
that was a lot of fun. As also the first time we introduced accents into the role-playing game for fun because one of the characters got a head injury and spoke differently than everybody else.
That's wonderful.
So that's where we're at with
Yeah.
secret societies.
All right.
Yeah. I guess, do we want to focus on more of the knights this time around since are we going to hit up? This will be different. This is obviously not a live episode. We're doing the recording for it. Let's talk about we're going down to one live a week, which will be very helpful until we can maybe, I think we'll see as the community grows if we want to move up to doing 2 lives a week again when we have more time.
Yeah.
But I guess we can also talk about like how they compare to other secret societies and other. We haven't really done any of those kind of questions. Is like, what are they similar to? How do they differ?
Yeah,
That would be interesting. I do want to hear about that.
Ask away.
All right, well, let's start with the Shadows. How do they compare to other secret societies in fantasy and in conspiracy?
We're not going to touch real life conspiracies. We'll touch those as little as possible. Because on the off chance that they're real, really real, like, I'm just kidding, but if they were real, then we don't want to draw their attention.
Something right.
It's pure coincidence. It's absolutely, like, we have no insider knowledge.
Right.
Nuke
So-
Savarion's conspiracy.
I'm trying to think who the Shadows Guild would be like.
More like our CIA, if we were going to have any comparison, but... Because not the KGB was way more aggressive.
You said keep it out of real life.
Yeah.
And then you just used 2 real life examples.
Real life examples, yeah. I'm trying to think, like, who in fantasy would we model after? There's not a whole lot of... There's a series that I read where there's a secret society of religious fanatics who worship the darker side of a particular... but that's more like, we're talking like Veritas Sanctus versus Parbocon worshipers.
Right. And I feel like a lot of secret societies in other fantasy worlds all exist with like these supercells where, like, I'm thinking the who are they, from Batman, Ra's al Ghul.
Oh, the Shadows League.
The League of Shadows. Yeah, is like assassins.
Yep.
Right, so that it's not like that.
No, we're not assassins.
Because we're puppeters.
Okay, so we have a suggestion about CIS Star Wars. CIS? What is CIS? That's an abbreviation? The SIS. Okay, then there needs to be dots between the SIS. Because I was really confused.
Went out and collected info from other...
Okay, we're talking about like with oh gosh, they have this series that they did. I'm not gonna get on my soapbox. However,
Yeah.
I'm not really pleased with the current Star Wars canon.
Okay, so
The secure.
I feel like-
secrecy and intelligence security. Okay.
I feel like we can. We
'Cause
don't
they're not
really
the
need to.
rebels.
I don't know who they compare with necessarily, but it's really a blanket organization that plays puppet master over the different empires and what they're doing, and they influence the events that happen.
Because I don't think most fantasies actually expose a secret society unless they're being the big bad evil, or
Right.
they're
I
being.
mean, I am familiar with one. It is the SCP Foundation, and
But the SCP Foundation is a government-run entity. Yes.
they're not government run.
What?
No, they're their own thing.
Okay, so they're a private organization that
That
operates
basically
in secret.
run the government. It's the other way around with them.
Okay.
Although that depends on your
I'm
canon.
doing that so that your face isn't covered.
That makes sense.
Hang on. Let me join the hoodie. The hood's up. We're secret
Or
societies.
secret societies today.
We should be secretly. Okay, do you steeple fingers? Because we are
Okay.
secret society. Whoa.
Okay, this is how we're rolling today.
All right.
So yeah, I'm sure there are fantasy worlds that have secret societies that are similar to this. I just am drawing a blank on them.
Right, because I mean, the 40K has the Inquisition, which is the closest thing to the secret society I can think of as far as that goes. But again, that's a government-sponsored arm and branch of the Imperium of Man in 40K. Then they also have like the secret, like you have information gatherers because I think the humans pre-affirmation had the House of Whispers, and their job was to gather information on what the goings on in this world, and it was not necessarily to defend necessarily against physical attacks, but also like what's happening, what are the dwarves creating, what are the other houses doing. Most of their focus was internal on what are the other houses doing and passing that information along to the necessary parties to
Right.
make sure that things were staying behaved in line and keeping up with code per se.
Yeah. Whereas the Shadows Guild's specific purpose originally was to
Fight Ayala.
fight Ayala. Yeah, subvert everything that he's doing. And so post affirmation, that's also like what they're still doing is subverting Ayala. They come out of Nazek after the affirmation and all that, and then during the Coalayan Empire fall, where they have their first big win against the Knights of End of Days, they also during that discover that the Knights existed, and that becomes part of their mission is to subvert the Knights because they're on the same side as Ayala.
And so we talked about how the Shadows Guild operate, and this is something we can jump into, because we didn't talk about how the Knights behave. Because the Knights, we know they're a doomsday cultist group, so they know that the world is coming to an end. That is their goal. And so they exist with decadence. They're also ageless, so they acquire wealth over a prolonged period of time. And so they operate as families. That way this family wealth stays internal. So if you are converted by an individual in... like you are indoctrinated and adopted into that family, and that family line continues, and at some point in time, just to assuage kind of confusion, because yes, people live a long time, but no one lives forever, except for
No one lives forever.
no one lives forever. Come on, you apes.
Nobody lives forever.
So they would have to kind of, this is my nephew, I'm teaching him the ways of the family, he's going to take over from me, because if you stay young forever, it starts to get very suspicious.
Right, and so the head of the family becomes a servant of the family
They rotate.
for a couple of generations, and then becomes a notable member of the family, and then becomes the head of the family again. So they rotate out that way. So
It's kind of fun. They have to take on new identities like every 4,000 years, effectively, to make sure that there's a collection of people that are no longer...
4,000
Not 4,000,
years.
sorry, like every 1,000 years, because some...
well,
Muscovert live up to 999
right,
plus
but
years.
every depending on the length of, so like a halfling family group would probably be a little bit bigger and have more rotating, whereas a Muscovert family group, you'd have like 3 rotations in the entire age of expansion. So
And then when the families kind of start to commingle and intermix, you start to have new races introduced, and
Right.
it becomes more natural that way.
Mhm.
So it doesn't stick along in one particular race to race anymore. The
Well,
families intermingle.
and unlike the Shadows Guild, where they operate in four-man cells, right? And the Shadows Guild die normally like everybody else, and the knights don't. And so it wouldn't be uncommon for a knight who was the head to go back down and take on a servant role, but move to a different family to take on that servant role, so that it obscures the line. So that wouldn't be uncommon, and sure, some of them would stay in the same family forever, but they would also rotate because their allegiance is to destruction, not to each other. So that would not be an uncommon thing to have them move around.
And kind of, I guess you can go with vampire bloodlines as kind of a we're not talking about like there's a game Vampire Bloodlines. We're not talking about that one, but like the idea that you are sired by this individual, and so the way that vampires work, especially in the World of Darkness, the type of vampire that sires you is the kind of vampire powers you get. That's not quite the same thing. The Broken have unique quirks that come from going insane. Effectively, one that's collective is they all perceive the emotions of the individuals they consume. And some of them can get the memories, some of them can get, it depends on what they're looking for and kind of what their psychosis would lead them to have. Mm-hmm. So that's where the euphoric state of I get to live and experience someone else's knowledge, and that helps them progress faster, which is kind of terrifying. So if they eat somebody, the secrets that that person has become exposed. Don't get eaten if you're a Shadows Guild member, because you exposed. That's why the cells have to operate so close knit as well. The only thing that a cell operator would have access to was the person that activated that cell, and then that person has to disappear if that cell gets disappeared. The faster they can respond to that, the safer they'll be. A little bit, yeah. It's kind of like a perversion of Duendelvin. So Ian asked like a Duendelvin's power, and it's kind of a perversion of that, but they have to eat and kill the person, and they get the essence memories. It's also why Duendelvin's power requires there to be essence. So if you get drained of essence, you are taken out of the web that Duendelvin has access to, which is why the ritual king or queen is hidden in obscurity, because they got essence eaten. The Wraith done ate them good.
Yeah. So nobody knows.
Nobody
Not
knows.
even Duendelvin.
Nope. Duendelvin does not know the origins
In
of
fact,
the ritual king.
I don't even know.
We have never solidified, and I don't think we're going to solidify.
I don't think we're going to.
Not at all.
We're going to leave it at obscurity forever for the sake of leaving it in obscurity. It's like Yoda's race. Nobody really knows.
Yep. They're like, oh, here's a Grogu randomly. Have a Yoda. Have a baby Yoda.
So Ian asked, so she couldn't see the memories of someone eaten by a Broken. Yes.
Exactly.
That
pulls them out of the web. The web of essence that exists within all things. That's kind of a cool way to look at it, too. It's like essence ties everyone to everything, and every magic to everything. Even if it's arcane, there's still the arcane and essence web that they still have a coexistence. They just can't interact directly.
Yep.
And so even if you were an arcanist, you still are essence made. It's what makes you move. It's the lifeblood of the world. And so to eat that...
So technically, if you got eaten by a knight, Duendelvin could tap into those memories through the knight, but it would be obscured with the knight's memories, and so Duendelvin wouldn't be able to discern whether they were the knight's memories or someone who got consumed memories.
No, it would be hard. It'd be wild and ecstatic or erratic. So, and then that response, because I can see the question going up. Ian's asking about the coins made by goblins.
What's that? Taylor ask those questions.
Yeah, my bad.
Hi.
We've been going. Taylor.
Ian asked, okay, so the coins made by goblins? Goblins are made out of essence. Could a Broken eat the coin?
No.
Not unless they break it into liquid format.
Well, no, because once it's been changed into the solid form, it's been basically
polluted.
Yeah.
They can't consume it like that.
Yeah, it's been made into something else. So, that would be like if you needed to eat iron, you couldn't take a steel sword and eat it and get your iron. You know what I mean?
Because even sword eaters don't eat swords. They just stick them down their throat in a really cool way.
No.
Because of the way that the goblins developed essence acquisition, they can keep a vial of liquid essence in an emergency on them. The broken can eventually do this. They actually do. It's part of their process. So if they're not able to feed because they are trying to obscure their existence or because it's becoming dangerous, they have essence that's liquefied that they can pull. But again, it's not very satisfying. You won't get the same memory endorphin rush that you would from consuming. Plus, I mean, the hunt is a big part of it. There's value and joy and pleasure in the hunt that all of them intake. Like, so even if you're a posh individual, you still like the chase of your prey, because they become a predatory being, and that's all part of it. Because then they get to savor the fear that being had as it was being hunted when they eat it.
Yep.
So they create these things.
Yeah.
So
it's about the destruction of life.
And to have essence in liquefied format, those memories would be muted and almost non-existent. So they do it for survival, and they wouldn't just quaff it. They'd literally just, because they had the proboscis.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, and Ian asked, and would someone be pulled out of the Duendelvin pool when they turn into coins?
No, because they're dead. A being is dead before the essence is drained in that regard. So the memories would... How put this make sense? You don't turn someone who's alive into a coin. If you were to do that, yes, they would become dead, but then they would be turned into liquid essence and turn into a coin, and then be pulled out of the web. They're killed, their cycle ends, their essence stays in the web, they're still accessible up until their death, and then the essence that's left byproduct in the body until the body decays is what they're pulling out. They're effectively speeding up the decay process, the mastication of the corpse.
So imagine essence as two separate, like...
Keep going.
I'm trying to think the best way to...
Because it's not the
Okay,
soul.
so think of essence, like imagine it like water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The hydrogen particles of water store the memories. Okay. And the oxygen start of the memories, or of the essence, store the power. Right. And so when they work together, the body can move and animate and do things, right? Because it needs both of those sides. But think of essence as that. And so a
Death occurs.
A death occurs, and that essence is like dispersed back into the world, right? Your soul leaves.
Goes to the port.
Right? Goes to the port. So your hydrogen and your oxygen of the essence dissipates back into the world, right? A goblin, or eventually an essence refiner, will pull the hydrogen or the oxygen out of it to turn it into pure essence, is what they call. So they pull the oxygen out to make it pure essence, and they can use pure essence to turn into liquid so that you can infuse weapons and armor with stuff, or turn it into coins. And then the broken will actually pull the hydrogen out of it for the energy and the memories, right? And so they're pulling different things apart from it, and the other side of it disperses. So technically, if a broken killed you and sucked your essence out, an essence refiner could still come make coins out of your essence, because that's the two parts of it. Does that make sense? Is that
cool?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a beautiful explanation. I love it, because I'm like, heck yeah, it's like an alloy. Essence is an alloy, and then you're taking it back to its basic parts.
right?
Yeah. And there is no benefit, all those out there, there is no benefit to making a coin out of a whole live person beforehand. It does not make the coin more
There's
valuable.
no
It doesn't
additive
make
bonus.
it stronger. You don't get more out of the person. I want to make sure we throw that. So there wouldn't be, unless you were wanting to be an awful person for the sake of, like, I have coins made of real people. This is Bob. This is Ginny. And I get it while they were alive.
I could logically see some of the broken doing that.
Yeah, turning their...
Because you'd have an essence refiner broken who was like, I'm turning people into coins as I eat them.
Oh, that's... Honestly, I was going to ask about that. Like, has that happened before?
We don't have any specific story where it does, but
Well, because, like,
I
the ones that I
don't
have
see it
written,
as unreasonable.
one of them, he the second born is what he calls himself, so he's the leader. He loves the chase, he loves the hunt, and so he terrorizes people for weeks before he actually moves in for the kill. Consistently, aggressively. And if he captures you, he is going to terrorize you and then release you and let that little bit of hope in that you can get away before he takes that from you. That's his
thing.
Oh, so
I
a
don't wanna call it
serial
a kink, but
broken.
that's what kind of popped in my head.
That's his thing. That's what
yeah.
he does.
There's another one that is looking for information. He's a dwarf, and he wants the secret of alchemy. And so he is actively and aggressively eating minotaurs to find the secret that he's looking for to make the perfect, effectively to make a synthetic type of essence so that if he doesn't want to eat people, he can still get the high, but not have to have the awful muted.
Right.
He's trying to find a way to combine living essence and essence refining into a thing.
So
That's
that
his
would
secret.
be probably the extremes of the broken one, who's trying not to consume living beings and still exist in the world, and so is a fairly normal person and just trying to solve that answer. And then you have the second, who was like enjoys
The hunt.
and the terror that he creates, because he's so old and he's so powerful, nobody can touch him except the first. And then he's like, well, everything is boring, so I'm gonna do things that excite me.
No, granted,
So-
the Knights of End of Days have a different operation. They would effectively have feeding troughs, so they wouldn't have to always go out and hunt. They can always have an available stash of.
Which is why towns disappear.
Yeah, until towns go away, they actually pay. It's kind of creepy, because they would pay to keep quiet the incident and like eat a whole town of problem makers for a raiding government body.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't just eat them; they would
Take them away.
and trap them, and
Yep.
then
And so that's how the
consume
knight-
them as needed.
It's how they hide their presence. They pay, they bribe, and they're smart about their feed.
Mhm.
They have to be. And we kind of went way off into the core of
Yeah.
things and
Well,
out
and,
of the secret society.
and they would logically, because the first maintains authority over the knights literally until their destruction, until they are destroyed completely. And so what ends up happening is because he experienced the second and that little cult doing the Broken Wars, going up against the Nine Races, like revealing themselves and creating terror and all that kind of stuff, united the people
and defeated
instead
the
of
purpose.
dividing them, and then they couldn't stand. So the Broken Wars, the cult group that stepped outside of the Knights, got wiped out. And so the first, seeing all that, watched it played out, and everything would have been like
Secrecy.
I
above
know
all.
better.
Yep.
You know.
I mean, he knew better from the get-go, but kind of what ended up happening is they all have the same vision of destruction, but some of the broken tend to believe that it's not happening fast enough.
Right.
And so they go through and they're like, we can just destroy it. And they wantonly go and make a fool of themselves. And then it perpetuates the existence and makes the first job harder. So offshoots, if he can't break them fast enough, he has to let them play out, because if he goes and messes with it, it creates a bigger problem.
Yeah. So I think what we should do, so this is the 4th episode of Secret Societies, right? Third episode of Secret Societies.
Third, my bad.
I feel like maybe what we should do is talk about how they fall, and then wrap up the Secret Societies, and then on Tuesday, when we come back for the next one, we'll start the next series that isn't Secret Societies. But I think we should spend the rest of the time that we have today doing this, talking about their downfall. Because the rest of the events, I mean, they're intertwined in all of the major events that play, but
Full disclosure, we don't have major, this is what they did in this event. We just have them as part of those events. So, like,
right.
for us to be able to be like, and they did this at this time, and this at this time. We don't have those in play yet. We're leaving some room for growth and letting stories play stories.
Right. So
Because not everything's major. Like, but the big
we
major
do have their
post
downfalls.
affirmation was the you named the Empire.
Colan.
The Coalian, that was the major play, and
Right.
then their big downfall at the hands of Duendelvin.
Yep. So
All right. So how did that happen? Just in general.
So we know a little bit. There's some episodes we talk about Duendelvin's route to power, and we hint at it. We've actually gone into that. There was a group of individuals that she spurned in to try to put Ayala away and put Vagog away, and wanted to gather all the god weapons together.
no,
She
the
starts-
purpose was to to destroy the Horakai.
That's right.
That was the purpose.
This was to break the hold the Horakai had over the people and spread truth. And then it ended up being a fortuitous thing that all the gods got yoinked out.
Yeah.
They got that pushed out, but that's all because of Mikhail. So they gathered the weapons up, and it was an unforeseen consequence because Ayala had embedded himself in this group that Duendelvin had put together and hid himself from her because he had gotten better and better and better at doing that. Plus, he's responsible for creating her pathways. He knows how she operates,
right.
And he's got Vagog juice. And so he embedded himself into this grouping. Mikhail realizes they've been betrayed, and then infuses the weapons with corruption magic because he had access to it, and it caused a cataclysmic break in the weapon, and then caused a huge explosion. All the other weapons shattered. Big god boom. Created a bubble around the world and created a lot of their problems, but also forced all the gods out. So Vertus Sanctus no longer in his cage, Vagog no longer present, everyone who was at that site gone, except for Duendelvin, who her Super Shimbare saved her.
Sacrificed himself.
Yep. But there were shards still of these weapons that were scattered around. And Duendelvin encountered a Shadows Guild group gathering the shards because they're like, these have god power in a minuscule amount, but if we get enough of them, we can fight the knights on even ground for the first time. We can have operatives with shards fight knights and start eradicating them. And she looks at that and she's like, oh, you guys are doing what now? Look, just give me that. And they're like, no, we're in charge now. And they kind of had this deviation of, we were going to limit the knights at the end of days, and then we're going to pull the strings in the world. And she's like, no. And starts eradicating the Shadows Guild aggressively.
Yep.
Because as they're gathering shards, now they're trying to fight her with her shards, and she's gathering shards, and it becomes a shard fight.
Yeah. So she uses the shards, she starts gathering those up, and she develops a team of supporters, and so it becomes, for a very short period of time, it becomes the Shadows Guild have stepped out into the light and said, nope, we need to be in charge. You guys have screwed up for long enough. We've been around since almost the beginning. Ayala's dead. We need to take control. And Duendelvin's like, no.
You're remembering
I don't
the
think
old
so.
ways.
I can see what has happened, and I can see what's going to happen. I can feel it. I can know. I need to be in charge. And so she starts gathering the shards. And
I mean, especially because she would see that they were the reason that the Horakai stepped out of line.
Right, because
they screwed that up.
Right, yeah. So she knows that, and so she gathers the shards, and then she cleans out the Shadows Guild from Nizek and all of their places.
Then goes and hunts the broken.
And then she uses all of the shards, and she forges, using the shards, in a suit of armor. So instead of new weapons, she forges herself a suit of armor out of the shards. And it's basically her god armor.
Power armor. In the age where there was no power armor.
So now she's Supergirl.
She made herself into the Empress.
Yeah. And so she uses that power and starts wiping out the Knights of the End of Days. And during that...
because the god magic was gone, Clat comes back into play.
Yes.
Cool.
Clat comes back
gets his body and soul back together.
Yep. So Clat steps in.
And he's like,
because he's a Parblicon supporter.
Yep. He's been a Parblicon priest his whole life.
Duendelvin, who saw what happened to him, goes, nope, I need you. So instead of killing him...
Which, they have an epic series of fights. Like, Clat is aggressively working against Duendelvin, even with her knight, like her power armor.
Yeah.
He is like, no, you're doing this about all wrong. We cannot live without the god's influence.
Well, and this is more of a... She doesn't want to kill him because she knows that he will be a useful member of the fight. And so, like, she could win that fight.
True.
And he keeps stepping into fight, and he keeps stopping. So eventually, she takes him to Nizek and then leaves him there. There's no way for him to get out. So she just leaves him in Nizek. And so while he's there, he starts seeing the events that play out because he can use that ring and read the books. He sees that and finally comes to terms with the fact that Duendelvin is right, steps back in, and then the two of them finally clear out the knights because it takes the two of them to do it. And that's why she kept him alive, because she's like, I need his power to help me win against the knights. and all of his connection to the underworld, because his soul was separated for so long, he's got intimate knowledge of
the underworld,
and all that kind of stuff, and needs it. And so she and him essentially become the rulers of the world, and that's how they clear out the Knights of End of Days
and the Shadows Guild.
Well, the Shadows,
Yeah,
she
they already-
clears
she
out the
already
Shadows
cleared. She
Guild
went
before
solo.
him,
Yeah.
and then uses him to clear out the Knights of End of Days. Because as soon as she starts going toe to toe with them, one on one she could win, but that
Their families.
their families, and that marshals the families
Yep.
to go militant, which they already were, but
They-
more prepared for the militant fight, and
Yeah.
so Duendelvin couldn't handle it anymore.
So yeah,
So-
that's how they come to a conclusion.
Yep.
And we'll have the chance to talk about more about Duendelvin's and Clat's reign of wonders, because it really is like
It's like the golden age.
it's true. It is the closest to the golden age we had since the creation.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Since pre-Vagog.
Except then we have the dragons that come down and make havoc, and that's a problem.
Can't wait to discuss that in the next episode.
Truth.
Should we do that for the next episode?
Dude, the dragons. Oh, the heralds unleashed.
You want to talk about the heralds or the Duendelvin rule?
I think
The rule of
we've kind of skipped over a lot of them. I think we should start tackling more about the empires themselves. Garthia, Lesparthia, and, yeah.
All right, so let's
Okay.
start on
That setting.
Thursday. Let's start the empires.
Yeah, we'll pick an empire. And
Empire
we'll flesh it out.
series of empires. So post affirmation empires. Because we talked about the pre affirmation with the races. So post affirmation empires.
Yep,
So, and I think we should just go chronologically.
I think so. Yeah.
Who started when and there. So it won't be just the empires, because we'll talk about we'll talk about
Lorithian Guard,
the Lorithian Guard,
and
the
Shadows
Caravanners,
Guild,
the Shadows Guild, all
not
of that.
Shadows Guild. We just went with Shadows Guild.
Yeah.
The Traders Guild. Sorry.
Traders Guild.
The Traders Guild, the pirates,
The
and
farmers.
The farmers. Yep.
Yep. All the empires.
Farmers Union.
There's a lot of there's a lot more of the empires and smaller cities and all of that kind of stuff that we can talk about.
Heck yeah,
So, all right, well,
guys.
All right.
We kind of overshadowed Taylor on this one. I'm so sorry. We went like boom.